Good afternoon. My name is Kyle Clausen, and today I will present a strategic product development analysis evaluating two potential growth opportunities for a mid-sized generic pharmaceutical company. The company is considering whether to expand into the anti-obesity generic market through the ANDA pathway or license an investigational anti-dementia therapy currently in late phase 2 development. These two strategies represent very different regulatory, scientific, and commercial pathways, so my goal is to compare these options and provide a recommendation based on regulatory requirements, clinical development considerations, and long-term business strategy. Looking forward to the discussion. The company currently generates approximately $200 million in annual revenue from two mature generic diabetes therapies. While these products have historically provided stable revenue, the competition, the competitive landscape is changing. New branded therapies with improved efficacy and safety profiles are entering the market, which threatens to erode the company's existing position. Because of this shift, the company must identify new development opportunities that will sustain long-term growth and strengthen its competitive position within the pharmaceutical market. Two primary development strategies are being evaluated. The first option involves entering the anti-obesity market by developing generic drugs using the abbreviated new drug application, as mentioned before, the ANDA regulatory pathway. The second option involves licensing an investigational anti-dementia therapy that has completed phase 2 development and is advancing through phase 3 trials under an investigational new drug program. These two options represent fundamentally different development models. The ANDA pathway focuses on demonstrating bioequivalence to an existing drug, while the IND and NDA pathway requires generating new clinical evidence demonstrating safety and effectiveness. The first strategy involves developing the generic anti-obesity drugs through the ANDA regulatory pathway. Under Section 505J of the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, generic drug developers must demonstrate that their product is pharmaceutically equivalent and bioequivalent to a reference-listed drug. Bioequivalence is typically established through pharmacokinetic studies that measure parameters such as maximum plasma concentration, known as Cmax, and the area under the concentration time curve, or AUC. Because the safety and efficacy of the original branded drug have already been established, large phase 3 clinical trials are generally not required. Generic drug development is generally faster and less expensive than innovative drug development. Instead of conducting large clinical trials, development efforts focus on formulation, on development, on manufacturer quality, and regulatory compliance. Typically, development timelines for generics range from 2 to 4 years, and development costs are significantly lower than those associated with innovative therapies. This, in general, makes the ANDA pathway a relatively predictable and lower-risk development strategy. However, the generic pharmaceutical market presents significant commercial challenges. Once patents expire, multiple generic manufacturers typically enter the market at the same time. This leads to rapid price erosion and reduced profit margins. Additionally, consolidation among pharmacy benefit managers and purchasing groups has intensified pricing pressure across the generic drug industry. Although anti-obesity therapies represent a large and growing market, the long-term profitability of generic versions may be limited due to aggressive competition. Some anti-obesity drugs may also require risk evaluation and mitigation strategies, or REMS programs, which can introduce additional regulatory complexity. The second option involves licensing an investigational anti-dementia therapy. Dementia, particularly Alzheimer's disease, represents one of the largest unmet medical needs in global healthcare. More than 55 million people worldwide currently live with dementia, and this number is expected to increase significantly as populations age. Despite decades of research, relatively few disease-modifying therapies have been successfully developed. This creates a significant commercial opportunity for effective treatments. Advancing the dementia therapy would require progressing through IND and NDA regulatory pathway. Since the drug is already in late phase 2 development, the next major regulatory milestone would be an end of phase 2 meeting with the FDA. This meeting would allow the sponsor and regulators to align on the design of the phase 3 clinical trials before those trials begin. Phase 3 trials must meet the regulatory standard for adequate and well-controlled investigations as defined in federal regulations. Phase 3 trials for dementia therapies typically involve randomized controlled trial designs with clearly defined endpoints and sufficient statistical power. In dementia drug development, regulators expect evidence demonstrating improvements in both cognitive function as well as in daily function. In addition to clinical efficacy data, NDA submissions must also include extensive supporting information such as preclinical toxicology studies, pharmacokinetic data, and chemistry, manufacturing, and controls documentation, otherwise known as CMC. If approved, the therapy may also be subject to post-marketing committees to further evaluate for the long-term safety of that drug. However, dementia drug development is associated with significant scientific and operational challenges. Historically, many investigational therapies targeting neurodegenerative diseases have failed during late-stage clinical trials. Phase 3 Alzheimer's trials often require thousands of participants and long follow-up periods because disease progression occurs quite slowly. These trials also require complex cognitive assessments and coordinated in international clinical trial sites. As a result, late-stage dementia trials are among the most complex and expensive studies conducted within the pharmaceutical industry. From a portfolio strategy perspective, the decision also involves broader considerations about the company's long-term positioning. Generic drug development offers predictable revenue and lower scientific risk. However, the generic pharmaceutical market has experienced increasing price erosion and competition over the past decade. In contrast, licensing in innovative therapy carries greater development risk, but offers the possibility of meaningful differentiation and long-term value creation. Many mid-sized pharmaceutical companies have successfully expanded into innovation drug development by licensing promising clinical stage assets from smaller biotech firms. When comparing the two strategies, the key trade-off lies between risk and reward. The ANDA pathway offers lower development costs, shorter timelines, and predictable regulatory requirements. However, intense competition within the generic pharmaceutical market limits long-term growth potential. While, in contrast, licensing the anti-dementia therapy involves significantly greater financial and scientific risk, but it offers the potential for transformational commercial impact. Based on this analysis, the recommended strategy is to pursue the licensing opportunity for the investigational anti-dementia therapy while continuing selective expansion in the company's generic portfolio. Although the dementia development program will require substantial investment and carries considerable risk, the potential market opportunity and strategic repositioning justify the commitment. Early regulatory alignment with the FDA, particularly during end of phase 2 discussions, will be critical to ensure that the phase 3 trials are appropriately designed. If successful, this program could significantly expand the company's revenue base and establish a foundation for long-term innovation-driven growth. These references include the FDA guidance documents, industry analysis, and peer-reviewed related research articles for drug development, bioequivalence, and dementia clinical trials that were reviewed throughout this presentation. Thank you for your time.